Foreign Secretary, in what areas would you want to seek to use the army? Good morning.
Morning, Nick. Look, we're taking a whole suite of targeted measures. The aim is, as we've come through the worst peak, we don't allow the virus to regain control over the country. We've seen an uptick in cases. We don't want to go back to the situation we were in March. So we're taking a whole range of measures. On this issue of the military, obviously the army have done a sterling job throughout. They've helped deliver PPE. They've helped with the delivering of tests, a range of other things. The idea is that they are always on hand to backfill some of the public service provision, including what the police do, in order to free up the frontline providers, including police officers, to go and do more of the things that they need to do. So as police officers, with the increased fines for businesses and those that don't adhere to the rules, the overwhelming majority of people have, but we need everyone to, the police get a bit of support in those sort of backroom areas in particular.
So where might we see soldiers or sailors or Air Force personnel guarding embassies? Is that what we're saying?
Well, that could be one of the things that happens.
Well, you're the government. The Prime Minister says we're going to use the military. I mean, are the military going to start enforcing people wearing masks or not having people in their back garden, Foreign Secretary?
No. So the point is they're ready to backfill or provide extra capacity where the police need it, so that it frees the police up to do the frontline work that's important for them.
So they won't be directly tackling individuals about wearing masks or knocking on doors?
I can't imagine that we'd end up in that position, but they're there as a contingency if we need them to do some of the capacity issues that free the police up on the front line.
OK. You will note probably more readily than many of my listeners, it's 6 months since March the 23rd when the first lockdown came in. We're being asked for another 6 months effectively sacrifice. What have we achieved in the first 6 months, Foreign Secretary?
Well, you're absolutely right. It's worth looking back. We went through the peak of the virus with all of that meant for fatalities in this country, the national lockdown. We've come through that. We've got the fatality rate, the hospitalisation rate from COVID right down. Businesses have opened, including in the hospitality sector. Schools are back. We don't want to go back. We want to go forward. And therefore, we've had to take some targeted measures to avoid the virus spreading further, to avoid it getting the kind of grip that it had on the country in March, and therefore the kind of reaction that we had to introduce at that time. So it's about preventing us taking a step back, allowing us to move forward.
But what have you and your colleagues achieved in these 6 months?
We've got control of the virus.
Well, then why these extra restrictions that were introduced yesterday?
Because whilst the hospitalisation rate and the fatality rate is now down, we've seen an uptick in the spread of the number of cases, and we don't want to see ourselves going back. It's always been a challenge to bear down on the virus whilst also opening up our economy and our society. And we've always said, and at the outset back in March and since then, we've said that the winter months would be a challenge because the virus spreads more easily than it does in the warmer months because of the other pressures on the NHS. So what we're doing is taking a preventative, if you like, suite of measures to make sure we contain and bear down on the virus, to make sure it doesn't end up sending the country back into the kind of lockdown, so that we don't end up with businesses closed, with schools closed, and we can go through the most difficult period during the autumn and the winter and keep making progress through into next year, into 2021.
Foreign Secretary, you mentioned the winter. Is Christmas cancelled?
No, and actually the reason we're taking these measures, and I appreciate the challenge there'll be for some in the hospitality sector and for others, with, for example, the limit of 6 on households, is to make sure that businesses keep rolling, that the recovery can keep mounting, to make sure that schools stay open, so that we don't have to, as you described, end up with more severe measures going into Christmas. The Prime Minister said a stitch in time saves 9. That's what we're doing.
Sorry to talk over you, but this rule of 6 is likely to apply through Christmas.
Well, look, if we get to a situation where we've been successful in bearing down on the virus, that the risk of an uptick, a flare-up, a second spike, and the level that we had in March is dealt with, we can review then. But what we don't want to do is have to take even more severe measures as we go through Christmas. And that's why we need to take the proportionate and targeted measures we're taking now. And I think people understand that. Certainly 78%, according to the YouGov poll overnight.